The Galactic Concordance Council gathered in the great chamber of Xylos Prime, a place built from living crystal that hummed softly with ancient energy. 12 alien species sat in their designated arcs, each delegation wrapped in robes or armor that reflected their homeworld's customs. The air was thick with tension, though no one spoke aloud. Instead, thoughts flickered through shared neural bands, cold and precise. At the center of it all stood two humans, Kyle Dawson and Lena Ruiz, waiting quietly. Their expressions calm despite the weight pressing down on them. Kyle was tall and lean, his dark hair streaked with gray from years of diplomatic service. He wore a simple Navy uniform, unadorned except for a small earth pin on his collar. Lena stood beside him, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. She was younger, with sharp eyes and a mind that moved faster than most alien processors. She had spent the last decade studying alien ecosystems, often clashing with concordance rules that forbade interference in natural planetary developments. To her, nature included compassion, and sometimes action. The issue before the council was Virelia. A brutal civil war had erupted there between two native factions, both armed with weapons supplied by outside traders. Millions were at risk. The Concordance's policy was clear: observe, document, but never intervene. Let the species find its own balance, even if that balance came through bloodshed. But a group of human volunteers, medics, engineers, and peacekeepers had ignored the order. They'd landed on Virelia, set up field hospitals, disarmed child soldiers, and brokered a fragile ceasefire using nothing but negotiation and goodwill. They saved over 200,000 lives. Now the Council saw this not as heroism, but as defiance. High Arbiter Zoran of the Mantari rose first. His voice, translated through the chamber's resonance field, was dry and sharp like cracking stone. The humans have violated Article 9 of the Concordance Charter. Their actions destabilized a natural conflict cycle. They imposed their moral framework on a sovereign world. This cannot be tolerated. Counselor Vex of the Silthari, slender and silver-eyed, added in a softer tone, "Their methods were effective, yes. But effectiveness without protocol breeds chaos. If every species acted on impulse, the galaxy would fracture." Kyle stepped forward. "We didn't act on impulse," he said, his voice steady. "We acted on empathy. The people of Virelia were dying, not from war but from starvation and disease, while your fleets watched from orbit. We offered water, medicine, and a chance to talk. That's not chaos. That's humanity," Lena added. "You call it interference. We call it responsibility. You have the power to help and choose not to. That's not neutrality. That's abandonment." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others remained still as statues. The Krellian representative, broad and scaled, finally spoke. "Your species is too emotional. Too unpredictable. You bend rules like twigs. The Concordance needs structure, not sentiment." After hours of silent deliberation through their neural links, the verdict came. Unanimous. Humanity was to be expelled from all Concordance-controlled space. Every ship, every station, every colony. Gone within 30 solar cycles. No appeals. No exceptions. Kyle didn't argue. He simply nodded. Lena looked around the chamber, her gaze lingering on each face, not with anger, but with something deeper. Disappointment, perhaps, or pity. They left the chamber without another word. Outside, the twin suns of Xylos Prime cast long shadows across the plaza. A few alien onlookers watched them pass, some curious, most indifferent. Back aboard their small diplomatic vessel, the Aurora, Kyle activated the comms. "All human outposts, listen closely. Directive Echo 9 is in effect. Begin withdrawal protocol." Across the galaxy, human crews sprang into motion, not with panic, but with practiced calm. They had prepared for this moment long before the vote. On mining stations near the Helios Belt, workers packed essential data cores and dismantled fusion reactors for transport. On research outposts orbiting gas giants, scientists backed up decades of discoveries onto portable drives. Families on colony worlds like New Carthage and Eden's Reach gathered their belongings, not with tears but with quiet resolve. The Concordance expected resistance. They expected protests, demands, maybe even sabotage. Instead, they got silence. Within days, human ships began vanishing from trade lanes. Within weeks, entire settlements went dark on Concordance scanners. By the end of the first solar cycle, there wasn't a single human signature left in Allied space. On Xylos Prime, Counselor Vex stood alone on a high balcony, watching the last human freighter disappear into warp space. He felt a strange emptiness, though he couldn't name it. High Arbiter Zoran joined him, arms crossed. "Good riddance," he said. "The galaxy will be more orderly without their noise." Vex didn't answer. He thought of the reports already coming in. Crop failures on Thessa 7, where human agronomists had once worked. Communication glitches on Orlan Station, where human techs used to patch systems with spare parts and clever code. He said nothing, though. Pride still held the council together, even as the first cracks began to show. Back on the Aurora, Kyle and Lena reviewed star charts beyond the Veil Nebula, a region the Concordance considered too unstable for settlement. But humans had never feared instability. They thrived in it. Lena pointed to a cluster of habitable worlds. "We'll start there," she said. "No rules. No councils. Just us and whatever we can build." Kyle smiled faintly. "They'll miss us," he said. "Not right away, but they will." And with that, the Aurora turned its nose toward the unknown, joining hundreds of other human vessels already streaming toward the edge of known space. Behind them, the galaxy felt quieter, cleaner, and somehow much smaller. The Concordance celebrated their departure as a victory. But in the silence that followed, a question began to echo in the minds of even the proudest delegates. What had they truly lost? At first, everything felt better. The Galactic Concordance Council met in the crystal chamber of Xylos Prime with lighter hearts. The humans were gone. No more messy appeals, no more rule-bending volunteers, no more emotional speeches about saving lives that were not theirs to save. Order had returned. High Arbiter Zoran declared it a new age of clarity. Counselor Vex said nothing, but even he allowed himself a small nod of relief. Peace at last. But peace, it turned out, was not the same as progress. On the farming world of Thessa 7, the first sign appeared quietly. The golden grain fields, once lush and tall, began to yellow at the edges. Blight crept through the soil like a slow poison. The local Krellian overseers called for help. Concordance agronomists arrived with scanners and sterile protocols. They analyzed the soil, ran simulations, and recommended a full quarantine. But the blight spread faster than their models predicted. Without the human bioengineers who had quietly crossbred native crops with earth strains for drought and disease resistance, the fields withered. Food shipments slowed. Prices rose. People grew hungry. On Orlan Station, a major hub for data and trade near the Helios belt, a routine maintenance cycle went wrong. A power surge fried the main relay core. Technicians from 3 species worked for days to restore function, following the official repair manuals to the letter. But the system remained unstable. What they didn't know was that human engineers had long ago bypassed a faulty regulator with a makeshift fix, a tangle of wires and a repurposed coolant valve that shouldn't have worked, but did. That fix had been undocumented, deemed non-standard by Concordance inspectors. Now without it, the station's comms flickered in and out. Trade logs went missing. Emergency alerts failed to transmit. No one connected these problems to the humans at first. After all, the Concordance was advanced. It had lasted for centuries without Earth's interference. Surely it could manage a few glitches. Yet the glitches multiplied. In the medical wing of the Xylos Central Archive, a rare pathogen broke out among archival drones. The infection spread through data ports, corrupting centuries of records. Concordance virologists treated it like any other system virus, logical, traceable, containable. But this one adapted. It learned. It jumped firewalls in ways no known code should. Only later did someone remember that Lena Ruiz had once warned them about self-modifying biodigital hybrids during a joint research symposium. Her notes had been filed under speculative and ignored. Counselor Vex began to notice something else too. Meetings felt longer, but less useful. Delegates spoke in circles, citing precedent after precedent, afraid to suggest anything new. Innovation had always been slow in the Concordance, but now it had stopped altogether. No one proposed bold ideas. No one took risks. Without humans in the room, asking uncomfortable questions, offering wild but workable solutions, the discussions grew stale, like old bread. He tried to raise the issue during a closed session. "We are solving yesterday's problems with yesterday's tools," he said. "The galaxy is changing. We must change with it," High Arbiter Zoran scoffed. "Change is chaos. Stability is strength. The humans brought noise, not progress, but Vex wasn't so sure. He started reviewing old mission logs. He read reports from joint operations where human teams had turned disasters into victories, not with superior weapons, but with improvisation. On the ice moon of Cryon 4, they'd melted permafrost with sonic pulses to find trapped miners. On the desert world of Sarnak, they'd taught locals to purify sand into glass shelters during a solar storm. These were not grand acts of war or diplomacy. They were small, clever human things, and now they were gone. Meanwhile, rumors began to drift in from the outer sectors. Neutral traders spoke of strange signals beyond the Veil Nebula, organized, strong, and full of activity. Some claimed to have seen human ships, sleeker and faster than before, trading with free colonies and sharing technology freely. Others said humans were building something new out there, not an empire, but a network, loose, open, and alive with ideas. The Concordance dismissed these reports as exaggerations. Humans were exiles now. They would fade into obscurity as all unruly species did. But then came the silence. Not the peaceful quiet the Council had hoped for, but a deeper, heavier silence, the kind that comes when something essential is missing. No more late-night emergency calls from human medics offering help during plagues. No more unsolicited data packets from human scientists with breakthroughs in clean energy or neural repair. No more off-the-record chats with Kyle Dawson, who always seemed to know when a delegate was about to make a terrible mistake, and gently steered them away from it. Even the stars felt different. Without human observation posts scanning the void for anomalies, several minor cosmic events went unnoticed. A rogue comet veering toward a mining colony. A micro-quasar flare that fried unshielded satellites. The damage was minor, but the pattern was clear. The galaxy had lost its watchful eyes. On Xylos Prime, the great crystal chamber no longer hummed with purpose. It echoed. Delegates arrived on time, spoke their lines, voted, and left. No one lingered to talk. No one shared stories over shared meals. The humans had been the only ones who ever invited others to eat with them, who laughed too loudly, who asked, "What if we tried it this way?" Counselor Vex walked the empty corridors late one night. He passed a mural showing the founding of the Concordance, 12 species joining hands in unity. He stopped and stared. For the first time, he wondered if unity required sameness. Maybe strength came not from perfect agreement, but from difference, from friction, from voices that refused to stay quiet. He returned to his quarters and opened a sealed file. It was Lena Ruiz's final report before departure, labeled for future reference. He had never read it. Now he did. Page after page described not just problems, but possibilities. Ways to merge organic and synthetic systems, methods to grow food in dead soil, designs for ships that could heal their own hulls. All of it practical, all of it ignored. He closed the file and looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were using these ideas, building, healing, living, and here in the heart of the Concordance, everything was slowly stopping, not breaking, not collapsing, just pausing, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath, waiting to see if the humans would ever come back. But they hadn't asked to return. They hadn't sent a message. They had simply left, and in doing so, revealed how much the Concordance had leaned on them without ever admitting it. Vex sat down at his desk and began drafting a quiet inquiry. Not to the full council, not yet, just to a few trusted contacts in the outer sectors. He asked one question: where are they now? He didn't know if he'd get an answer. But for the first time since the humans left, he felt something stir inside him. Not fear, not regret, but hope. Faint, fragile, but real. And in the silent halls of Xylos Prime, that small spark felt like the loudest sound in the galaxy. The first real crisis struck without warning. A massive solar flare erupted from the Helios star. Not unusual in itself, but this one carried a strange electromagnetic pulse that scrambled every relay node in the Helios network. Within hours, 3 entire sectors went dark. No comms, no navigation beacons, no emergency signals. Ships drifted blind. Colonies lost contact with supply lines. Panic spread faster than the flare itself. The Concordance scrambled to respond. Technicians worked around the clock, following every protocol in the manual. But the human-designed signal boosters, those clever little boxes that could auto-tune to any frequency and reroute data through backup channels, were gone. They had been labeled non-standard and removed during the Great Purge after humanity's departure. Now without them, the network stayed broken. Repairs took weeks instead of days. Food rotted on stranded freighters. Medicine expired in unrefrigerated holds. People died not from violence but from silence. Counselor Vex pushed for a solution. He suggested reaching out to neutral traders who might have spare parts or knowledge. High Arbiter Zoran blocked him. "We do not beg," he said. "The Concordance fixes its own problems." But the problems kept coming. On the Outer Rim, the Cathari pirates saw their chance. For years, they had been held in check by human-led patrols. Humans didn't follow strict rules of engagement. They used decoy signals, fake distress calls, and surprise ambushes from asteroid shadows. They fought dirty, yes, but they kept the shipping lanes safe. Without them, the Concordance defense fleets moved slowly, announcing their positions with formal hails and predictable patrol routes. The Cathari laughed as they raided one colony after another, stripping them of tech, food, and people. The first colony to fall was Neural 9, a farming world with little military value, but home to over 50,000 souls. The Concordance fleet arrived 3 days too late. They found only smoke and silence. Zoran called it an unfortunate delay. Vex called it a failure. In the council chamber, voices grew sharper. The Krellian delegation demanded action. The Silthuri warned of wider collapse. Even the usually silent Mantari elders shifted in their seats. But no one knew what to do. Their strategies were built for large-scale wars, not fast, chaotic raids. They had no doctrine for this kind of enemy. Desperate, the science division dug through old archives. Someone remembered Lena Ruiz had once written a paper on adaptive AI for asymmetric warfare, systems that could learn from enemy tactics and change in real time. They pulled the file. The code was there, complex but complete. Technicians loaded it into a test drone. It failed instantly. Without Lena's notes on context, how the AI needed human oversight to avoid ethical traps, how it adjusted based on civilian presence, the system misfired. It targeted friendly ships. It froze during simulations. It was useless. Vex stood in the empty lab afterwards, staring at the dead drone. "We kept the words," he said to no one, "but we threw away the wisdom." Back on Xylos Prime, unrest grew. Refugees from raided worlds crowded orbital docks, begging for shelter. Trade slowed to a crawl. Fear replaced order, for the first time in living memory. Citizens questioned the Council's ability to protect them. Murals of unity were defaced with spray-painted questions. Where are the humans? Why did you send them away? Zoran tried to restore calm with speeches about discipline and patience. But patience was running out. Then came the worst news yet. The Cathari had captured a Concordance supply depot near the Draxus belt. Inside were prototype weapons, medical stores, and, most dangerously, a prototype neural core meant to link all defense fleets into one coordinated mind. If the pirates reverse-engineered it, they could hijack entire fleets with a single command. The Council held an emergency session. Panic flickered beneath their calm surfaces. Zoran proposed a full military strike, Bushidaijai, but the fleets were spread thin, slow to mobilize, and low on morale. The vote was tied. Vex stood. "There is another way," he said. "We ask for help." Silence fell like a stone. "Ask who?" Zoran sneered. "The humans? They are gone. And good riddance." "They are not gone," Vex said quietly. "They are beyond the Veil Nebula, and they are thriving. Traders say their ships are faster, their tech smarter, their people happier. They did not break when we cast them out. They rebuilt. You would bow to them." A Krellian delegate hissed. "I would save our people," Vex replied. "Pride does not feed the hungry. Pride does not stop pirates. If we do not act, the Concordance will not fall to war but to silence, to slow decay, and no one will remember us as wise. They will remember us as fools who threw away their best ally." The chamber buzzed with uneasy thoughts. Some agreed. Most resisted. But the fear was stronger than pride now. After a long, tense debate, a narrow vote passed. Not to beg, not to surrender, but to send a small unarmed envoy beyond the Veil Nebula. To speak, to listen, to see if the humans would even answer. Vex volunteered to lead it. He chose only 2 others, a young Silthari linguist and a retired Krellian pilot who had once served alongside human crews. They took the smallest diplomatic vessel available, painted white for peace and carried no weapons, no demands, only questions. As their ship left Xylo's orbit, Vex looked back at the glittering spires of the capital. It felt smaller now, fragile. He thought of Kyle Dawson's calm eyes, Lena Ruiz's sharp mind, and the way humans always seem to find a third path when others saw only two choices. He did not know if they would be welcomed. He did not know if the humans even cared what happened to the Concordance now. But he knew this. If they turned away, the galaxy would keep breaking. And this time there would be no one left to fix it. The ship entered warp, streaking toward the unknown. Behind them, the Concordance held its breath. Ahead, silence and maybe, just maybe, a second chance. The journey beyond the Veil Nebula was longer than expected. The nebula itself was a storm of ionized gas and shifting magnetic fields, the kind of place most Concordance ships avoided. But Vex's small white vessel, named the Whisper, carried no heavy armor or rigid navigation systems. It moved like a leaf on wind, guided by the old Krellian pilot's instinct and the Silthari linguist's quiet calculations. After 17 days of drifting through violet clouds and silent voids, they saw it. Not a fortress, not a fleet, not even a single planet. Instead, a loose web of habitats floated in the calm space behind the nebula, some built from salvaged freighters, others grown from biometal that shimmered like living coral. Solar sails caught distant starlight, gardens bloomed in transparent domes. Children's laughter, picked up by the Whisper's long-range audio, echoed through the comms. Human children, playing near a station shaped like a spiral shell. The place had no name, the pilot noted. Just coordinates. And life. They sent a simple signal. Peace, we come to talk. For hours, nothing. Then a human ship approached. Sleek silver with no weapons visible. It matched their speed and opened a channel. A woman's voice, calm and familiar, spoke. "Counselor Vex, we've been expecting you." It was Lena Ruiz. She met them not on a warship or a command deck, but on a floating garden platform tethered to a research hub. Vines curled around benches. Real soil crunched underfoot. The air smelled of rain and green things. Kyle Dawson stood beside her, older now, his hair fully gray, but his eyes as steady as ever. He wore no uniform, just a simple tunic and trousers. No pins, no rank, just a man. Vex stepped forward, hands open. "We did not expect this." "What did you expect?" Kyle asked gently. "Anger, revenge, a wall of guns." "I expected silence," Vex admitted. "Or refusal." Lena offered them seats. "We don't hold grudges," she said. "But we do remember." They talked for hours, not about politics or treaties, but about what had happened since the humans left. Vex spoke of the blights, the broken networks, the pirate raids, the fear. He did not make excuses. He did not blame others. He simply told the truth. The Concordance was failing, not because it was weak, but because it had cut off a part of itself, and pretended it didn't matter. Kyle listened without interrupting. When Vex finished, he looked out at the stars. "We didn't leave because you banished us," he said. "We left because you stopped seeing us as partners. You saw our empathy as weakness, our flexibility as chaos. You wanted order above all else, even if that order meant letting people die." Lena added, "You called us unpredictable, but unpredictability is how you survive the unexpected. The galaxy isn't a machine. It's alive, and it needs more than rules to thrive." Vex bowed his head. "We were wrong." Silence settled, but it was not cold. It was the kind of quiet that comes after a storm, when the air is clean and the world feels new. Then Vex asked the question burning in his chest. "Will you help us?" Kyle and Lena exchanged a look, not of doubt but of shared understanding. "We will," Kyle said, "but not the way you think," he explained. The humans would not return as servants or soldiers. They would not patch the Concordance's broken systems and leave. If they helped, it would be on one condition. The Concordance must change. Not just its policies, but its heart. It must allow for flexibility, for local judgment, for voices that ask, "What if?" instead of "What is written?" No more blind obedience to protocol, Lena said. No more punishing compassion. You need to trust your people to do the right thing, even if it's messy. Vex hesitated. He knew how hard this would be. Soren would fight it. Many would call it surrender. But he also knew the alternative. Slow collapse or worse, total ruin at the hands of the Cathari. "What do you propose?" he asked. Kyle outlined a new framework. A provisional alliance, not a return to the old concordance. Human representatives would sit as equals, not petitioners. Joint councils would include not just species leaders, but engineers, medics, teachers, people who dealt with real problems every day. Decisions would be made closer to the ground, not in crystal towers light years away. And the Cathari? Vex asked. Lena smiled faintly. We've already started tracking them. Their ships have a unique engine signature. We can find them. But we won't just destroy them. We'll offer them a choice. Lay down arms and join the network or face consequences. That's how we handle threats now. With options, not just force. Vex felt something shift inside him. Not just hope, but clarity. This wasn't about getting humans back. It was about becoming something better. Before he left, Kyle handed him a small data chip. This contains everything we've learned out here. New energy cells, crop designs, medical protocols. It's yours. But it only works if you're willing to use it differently. On the journey back, Vex stared at the chip in his palm. It felt light but carried the weight of a new beginning. When the Whisper re-entered Concordance space, it was met by a dozen warships. Zoran's voice crackled over the comms, sharp and cold. Report your findings. Did they refuse? Vex took a breath. They agreed to help. But only if we change, silence followed. Then shouting. Then confusion, but Vex didn't flinch. He had seen what humans built in exile. Not with power, but with care. And he knew now that the real strength of the galaxy had never been in its rules, but in its people. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to remember that. The return of Counselor Vex sparked chaos in the crystal halls of Xylos Prime. High Arbiter Zoran called an emergency session before the Whisper had even docked. He stood before the full council, voice trembling with fury. They demand we change our very nature. They insult our traditions. This is not aid, it is conquest by shame. But Vex did not back down. He played the recording of Kyle Dawson's words for all to hear. He showed the data chip's contents, schematics for self-repairing solar arrays, drought-resistant seed banks, neural nets that could predict pirate movements. He spoke not as a defeated envoy, but as a witness. They did not gloat. They did not bargain. They offered a path forward, if we are brave enough to walk it. The debate raged for days. The Krellian delegation split. Elders refused, but younger members whispered of empty markets and scared families. The Silthari, once rigid, now leaned toward Vex. Even some Mentari admitted in private that their fleets were losing ground. The final vote came down to one voice, Elder Tarn of the Ulith, a species known for patience. He had said nothing for weeks. Now he rose slowly, his crystalline skin glinting in the chamber light. We have spent centuries building walls to keep chaos out, he said. But life is chaos. Growth is messy. If we do not bend, we will break. I vote yes. The motion passed by a single vote. The old Concordance Charter was dissolved. In its place, a new provisional alliance was born, one that included human representatives not as guests but as equals. Kyle Dawson and Lena Ruiz returned not as petitioners but as co-architects of a new order. Change did not come overnight. Old habits clung like rust. Zoran resigned in protest, vanishing into quiet exile. Some outposts resisted human oversight, fearing loss of control, but the Cathari raids forced action. With human guidance, joint defense teams formed, Krellian pilots flying alongside human navigators, Silthari strategists sharing maps with Earthborn scouts. They used decoys, surprise routes, and psychological tactics the Concordance had once called dishonorable. Within 2 months, the pirate threat shrank to scattered remnants. Refugees began returning home. Lena Ruiz took charge of the science wing. She didn't replace old systems, she wove new ones into them. On Thessa 7, she worked with local farmers to reintroduce hybrid crops, teaching them to adapt seeds to changing soil. On Orland Station, she helped engineers rebuild the comms network with open-source code that anyone could fix. Technology should serve people, she told a group of wide-eyed trainees, not the other way around. Kyle focused on trust. He walked the corridors of Xylos Prime not in uniform but in simple clothes, stopping to talk with cleaners, cooks, data clerks. He asked what they needed. He listened. Slowly, people began to speak up, about broken lifts, unfair rations, ideas for better waste recycling. Small things, human things. And for the first time, those small things were acted on. The real test came on the mining outpost of Rel 5, deep in the outer rim. A reactor leak threatened to poison the entire colony. Under old rules, evacuation would take weeks, bureaucracy, permits, safety reviews. But a mixed team, 2 humans, a Krellian engineer and a young Silthari medic, acted without waiting. They sealed the core with a foam compound humans had developed in exile, rerouted power through backup lines, and treated the exposed workers with a fast-acting antidote Lena had shared. The crisis ended in hours. Afterward, the Krellian engineer looked at his human partner and said, "You didn't ask permission." The human shrugged. "We didn't have time." That moment spread, not through official channels, but through stories told over meals in mess halls on comm lines. People began to understand rules were tools, not chains. Months passed. The Provisional Alliance held. Trade returned stronger than before. New outposts formed, not under concordance decree, but through mutual need. Humans taught others how to grow food in metal hulls. Others taught humans how to read stellar winds for safer travel. Knowledge flowed both ways. One evening, far from Xylos Prime on a small repair station orbiting a quiet moon, a team gathered after a long shift. There was Mara, a human technician with grease on her cheeks, Jorik, a broad-shouldered Krellian with a knack for welding, and Eli, a young Silthari with quick fingers and a dry sense of humor. They sat on crates sharing a meal of spiced root stew and recycled water. Their latest project, a power converter for a water purifier, had failed 3 times. But on the 4th try, it hummed to life, steady and strong. Mara laughed, wiping her hands on her pants. "Told you we just needed to cross the blue wire with the green one," Jorik grunted. "That should not work." "It doesn't," Eli said, smirking. "But it does," they all laughed. It was a small sound, lost in the vastness of space, but it carried something the galaxy had almost forgotten: joy in solving a problem together. Back on Xylos Prime, Vex stood once more on the high balcony, watching stars drift across the sky. The crystal chamber behind him was no longer silent. Voices rose and fell, some arguing, some agreeing, all engaged. It was messy. It was loud. It was alive. He thought of the day the humans left. The council had called it a victory. Now he knew the truth. Their departure had not been an end, but a mirror. It showed the concordance its own emptiness, and gave it a chance to fill that space with something better. Kyle joined him on the balcony. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. "They'll never be perfect," Kyle said finally. "No," Vex agreed. "But they're trying. And that's enough." Below them, the city lights shimmered, not with cold order, but with warm, chaotic life. Somewhere a child laughed. Somewhere a new idea sparked. Somewhere a broken thing was being fixed, not by rule, but by care. The galaxy had not been saved by weapons or treaties. It had been saved by people, different, flawed, willing to listen. And in that simple truth, the council finally understood what it had lost and what it had been given back.